welcome back. Welcome back to the Extraordinary Drummer Show. As you know, I'm your host, Sharon Moore. My guy today is just phenomenal. Phenomenal as a drummer, as a person. He's a producer. He's a studio musician. He's a touring musician. You've seen him on everybody's records. I'm going to name a few credits here in a second. He's a drummer's drummer. Kirky B. Piscara.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Kirk.
How are you, man? It's been a minute, bro.
It's been a long minute, man.
We said it's been 30 years. That's too long, man. That's way too long.
You prefer being called Kirky B?
Man, look, as long as you call me and there's either a meal or some money or both attached to it. Especially these days, bro.
Kirky B, how'd you get that name, Kirky B?
Man, this goes it's a combination of things because it originally came from when I was an infant and my Filipino grandmother, she spoke with a really thick Filipino accent and she couldn't say my name, Kurt. So she would say Kirke. Plus she didn't have teeth. She was toothless. It's like she'd rub my cheek and say Kirke, Kirke, Kirke. So there's that. Then you fast forward to me playing with Morris Day in the time and Shalimar with Mickey Free, and it just rolled out their mouth off their tongue, Kirky B. So it was just meant to be that's my name, and I welcome it because it's like when people call me Kurt, it's few, mostly it's just Kirky B.
Yeah.
So that's it.
What was it like walking through NAMM and everybody grabbing you?
Honestly, man, like back in the day when we used to go and God, you couldn't even get through the drum hall without seeing 50 drummers hugging everybody, saying, hey, what's up? You haven't seen them in a while. They just got off tour or they're going on tour or whatever. That was incredible, But now that we've gone through what we've gone through, like now I have reservation of like, okay, I'm going to come hug you, but wait a minute. I want to be safe. You want to be safe. So it's like, I'm all twisted up still about all this, man. But to answer your question, it's an honor, man. It's an honor to be acknowledged from your peers. For sure.
Well, you definitely acknowledge. I just remember if you wanted a job, you had to wait till Kirky B went on vacation or took a break or something.
Man, look, it was great during that time, when we came up, because not only was there work for everybody, but there were tours for everybody. There was always a tour going on or someone was recording. It was just plentiful. The music business was thriving. Millions of dollars being funneled through, in and out of there. New artists being signed. You played with them all too, man. So, man, I mean, that whole, LA hip hop scene, man, and rap, bro, you were at ground zero for that. Because I'm looking at all those records you played on back there.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. I want to touch upon some of these credits, man, if I may.
Please.
What was it like working with Mick Jagger?
Man, I get asked that all the time, and I'll tell you a story, man. As you know, I don't know if you saw that movie, Get On Up, about James Brown.
Yeah, I did. As a matter of fact, I did, yes.
Yeah, remember that came out about, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. Not too long ago. That was executive produced by Mick Jagger. Because he's such a James Brown fanatic. So what you asked what it was like to play with Mick, man, he's kind of like the British James Brown. And that's essentially how I think I got the gig was when I auditioned, everyone was playing Stones tunes, Brown Sugar, Paint It Black, the usual Stones, rock and roll. And so when I came in, he asked me what I wanted to play. And I said, I was like, I knew he was like a James Brown fanatic. I was like, let's play Cold Sweat. Man, his eyes got this big and we busted into Cold Sweat for 25 minutes. We were playing Cold Sweat and he was all sweaty. He was doing the chicken neck dance. He was doing all of that. He turned around and said, all right, you're hired. We start next week on rehearsing and getting ready for the record and the tour. So yeah, man, that was cool.
Let me throw a few more at you. Seal.
Man, that dude was plucked out of obscurity in England. Um, Dude was just a massive talent. Such a interesting voice, deep and throaty and interesting, and it was great to have had been a part of that first record that I played on, and his his excitement of becoming this new artist and to watch him flourish into the artist that he is today. Man, it was great to be at the bottom, ground level at that, to watch that happen. And when I hear those songs from the first record that I played on, man, it's always like, wow, that was like in 1991 when that record came out.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I got a few more I want to throw at you. One of my favorite, Christopher Cross.
Oh man. Well, he's a dear friend of mine through Stephen Bray. I don't know if you remember Stephen. Stephen was the drummer of the band called The Breakfast Club, who was not only the drummer for The Breakfast Club, but also the producer and songwriter of all the early Madonna hits. So he's a dear friend of mine. And Stephen, as you know, has gone on to do The Color Purple, the music for The Color Purple. What else does he do? He's always, I think he's got another Broadway thing. Sorry, Stephen, if you're watching this, I forgot what else you're into, but man, he's done everything. He's produced Madonna. He's produced just all kinds of artists. He's had studios. I was honored to work under his wing as a producer in his production suites when he had it in Burbank, along with Tony Shepard. Do you know Tony? I got to get you to interview Tony, man. He's great.
Love to.
Yeah, he's an engineer. He did all the Take Six stuff. Bad
Couple
dude.
more. Celine Dion.
Man, I never got to meet her, but the producers that I worked for her, I got to cut to her vocal. Just the sketches of the tune with her like sketch vocal, and she's as good as it gets, man. And it was just, I'm getting chills just thinking about it now, and how hearing her voice in the cans, recording to her voice, that's just incredible.
Yeah, she's
she's one of a kind, man.
But I can't help you on this one. What's it like playing Water Sign and Tune 88 and all that stuff with Jeff Lorber?
Man, Jeff, I never played live with Jeff, man, but we co-wrote a tune together called Do What It Takes. And I played on a couple of demos for him in the studio. I played on that song that we co-wrote together. We've been going back and forth to try to do some live stuff, but Jeff, man, I've always admired Jeff. I mean, God, since like a freshman in high school, I was listening to a lot of Jeff Lorber fusion. I was listening to a lot of Ricky Lawson with the Yellow Jackets. So I was into that funk fusion thing, along with Parliament Funkadelic, Prince, The Time, the Minneapolis thing, along with funk fusion. And so, I mean, high school was just, in the 80s, man, there's just so much music to grab from. And Jeff was definitely one of the cats I listened to.
Maybe another 2 or 3 more. Tina Turner, did you work with her, or was it a studio session?
Yeah, I played on the record for the music for the movie What's Love Got to Do with It? Lawrence Fishburne, who, by the way, was my drum teacher. I was his drum teacher, Lawrence. I was giving him lessons, but then the pandemic hit, and I haven't seen Lawrence. I got to shot to him, man, because he's a bad drummer, dude. He could play. He's a lefty, but he could play
Wow.
drums.
I didn't know that. I didn't know
But
that.
yeah, Tina, man, I got to re-record all those great hits with Tina, and I think I've said this in a couple of interviews, but I'll tell you on this one, it was so great to play Proud Mary with her. And she said, "Drummer, come into the room with me. I want to show you something." And so we go into the drum room, and she said, "I'm going to be right here in front of you, and I'm going to dance. You watch my legs. And when my legs speed up, the tempo has to speed up." And when was this? 1994. Those legs were still killing. So I was like, sure, I'll watch those legs. And sure enough, she cut the vocal right there in front of me while we played Proud Mary. Da 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 da. Man, and it's surreal when I tell that story because it's like no one could ever experience that. Tina Turner dancing in front of your drum kit, playing Proud Mary. She's it, man. She's the queen of rock and roll. Oh, show.
Man, oh man, oh man. Let's go country and western a couple of times.
All right.
Couple of your artists. Carl Perkins.
Oh man, Mr. Blue Suede Shoes, the nicest cat, man. This was in '96. I had just recorded with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and then Tom was doing stuff with Carl and John Fogerty from, he used to be the singer and songwriter for Creedence Clearwater Revival, but then he did the solo thing. So those three cats were in the studio working together along with Johnny Cash. He was there too. But the thing that stood out to me with was Carl was my wife and I were getting married in '96. And so when I was working with all those cats, I was in the studio with them for months on end. And he pulled me aside and he said, "Hey man, I understand you're getting married in a couple of months." I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Can I give you a word of advice?" I said, "Yeah, for sure." And he said, "Don't go to bed mad." And I was like, "Okay." He goes, "Whatever you do, you make sure you resolve it with your wife before you guys go to bed." So I ran home that night and I told my future wife, I was like, "Okay, Carl Perkins said, don't go to bed mad." So, I mean, we still try to live by that creed to this day. Sometimes it don't work, sometimes it does, but we always think about Carl Perkins. Carl Perkins, remember what Carl Perkins said? But that dude was, dude wrote Blue Suede Shoes, man. What are you gonna say about that? Right?
Let me throw one more at you. The man himself, Johnny Cash.
Man in Black. Another cool dude, man. I cannot find it to save my life, but you remember the cassette voicemail answering machines?
Mm.
Remember those back in the day? You put a 90-minute or 120-minute cassette in the answering machine and you could leave a message as long as you want. Remember those?
Oh yeah.
He'd left me a long ass message on my machine, man, and I cannot find it, man. It's somewhere. But he basically left me a voice message on the cassette tape, just thanking me profusely and helping him make his record and playing on all of his songs and how much he enjoyed working with me. And, God, man, to have a cat like that call you personally and tell you that, Johnny Cash, of all people, too, that was incredible. Incredible.
What do you think it was about your playing that just got you through all those sessions and everybody in all genres called you?
I think it's my love for, I think, coming up when I did in the '70s and '80s, there was so much music happening during that time that was so good. I remember the two pillars growing up. And the two genres of music that were really effective in society was punk rock and disco. And people were either hated disco or they loved disco, loved punk rock or hated punk rock. But then there was all that stuff in between. There was still um, jazz fusion happening there, straight up funk, P-Funk, Prince, all the Minneapolis stuff, Confunction, all the stuff coming out of Atlanta, Midnight Star, Shalimar. I mean the 80s, man, the Solar sound, Dick Griffey's label. I mean, man, there was just so much music. So I think between listening to all that rock and roll, I grew up listening to Led Zeppelin, Van Halen, P-Funk, Prince, and putting that all together, I think that helped me craft the drummer I am today, because it's like it all boils down to groove, right? No matter what style, if that groove ain't hitting, then what do you got? What's that saying? You're only as good as your drummer. The band is only as good as its drummer. So it's like that was always in the back of my mind. It's like, okay, I got to make sure this is a good band. I got to make this band sound good. I don't want to be the weak link. I want it to be one tight unit together.
Yeah, man.
But
Hey, let's go all the way back. Let's go all the way back. Where are you originally from?
Well, my grandparents are from the Philippines, and both of my parents were born here in California. And then I was born up in Santa Maria, California. Do you know where that is? It's an hour north of Santa Barbara. So if you just go right up the 101 from Los Angeles, it's about a 2.5, 3 hour drive from LA. And yeah, that's where I grew up and came up. Started playing drums when I was 5. My mom and dad found me in the kitchen pounding on pots and pans with the spoons. As we all start off as kids, right? Pretty much. And got my first drum set when I was 5. It was a Tony the Tiger drum set, and I busted through that in a week. So then when I turned 6 or 7, they bought me a real drum kit. It was a Ludwig 20, 12, 14 Champagne Sparkle drum kit. And like a fool, I traded it for a homemade guitar in 7th grade. And I'm kicking myself to this day of doing that. But yeah, my mother was a musician. Her brother, my uncle, is also a musician. They both played piano and B3. So I started playing clubs when I was 11 with my mom and my uncle. So, organ jazz, I'm all over that. I love, Jimmy Smith, the late great Joey DeFrancesco. I just love anything organ, B3. It's funky. It's a funky instrument, man, as you know.
Oh yeah, I love what Tower Power and Chester and those guys do with organ. They just rips that stuff up. Let me ask you this one.
Crazy.
What was the high school scene like?
Same thing, man. Growing up in Santa Maria, there's a lot of cholos, a lot of agricultural cats, surfers, jocks. So I grew up around a lot of different personalities and nationalities. So, you go to one party and it's all the cholos and they're all playing P-Funk and 50s, doo-wop. And then you go to a jock party and they're playing all the rock and roll stuff, Van Halen, and then, you go out to Tanglewood, in the hood, man, and they got, Confunction out there, P-Funk, Prince, they got playing in that hood. So, and plus there was a record pressing plant in my hometown, the Columbia record pressing plant, which my mom and all my aunties worked at. So as a young kid, man, every last Sunday of the month, they would have a record sale and you could go buy records for 25 cents. And you could buy full records, but, they were either mismatched or the label was off. They were seconds, but they're primo condition, the vinyl. So man, I would grab James Brown records, Herbie Mann, Miles Davis, um, Sly and the Family Stone, Stones, just so my palette of music is all over the place, and I love it all equally, and I think that's really what the key is. I think to what makes a, a well-rounded musician is to listen to everything.
When you were in high school, did you do any of that marching, bugler corps stuff? Did you play drums in high school?
No, I did in from fifth grade to eighth grade. I played in marching band, but I was already excelling, playing in nightclubs with my mom, and so I was just a little too far advanced drum wise. So I stopped playing drums and I started playing saxophone. And I after a few years of playing saxophone, I quit because I don't know if you remember coming up, but remember on KCET they would have late night bebop and jazz at night. And do you remember Hassan Roland Kirk, the blind dude that would play like 4 or 5 saxophones at the same time, and he would puff his cheeks out? Remember that? Hassan Roland Kirk. So late night, I stayed up, and my mom's like, "Oh man, you got to check out Hassan Roland Kirk. He's amazing." So I checked him out, and so at band practice the next day, I took my alto saxophone, and I was trying to be like Hassan Roland Kirk, and I blew out my cheeks, and my ears popped, and it scared the living daylights out of me. So I'll never forget, man. I went home, I put the saxophone in its case, closed the case, and I never opened it again. So I was playing saxophone from sixth grade to eighth grade, and eighth grade I quit because I couldn't play like Hassan Roland Kirk.
I was reading somewhere Jeff Porcaro was a big influence on you.
Yeah, man. Had it not been for Jeff, I wouldn't be a studio drummer. Um, I went to Musicians Institute in Hollywood and studied under his dad back in '84. I went there from '84 to '85. 1 month prior to graduating is when I auditioned for Morris. So I had to graduate a month early so I could start touring with Morris. But while that was happening, while I was at school, it wasn't until years later that Joe Porcaro told me that, yeah, man, my son Jeff used to come to the school and keep his eye on you because he knew that you had what it takes to be like one of the next cats coming up. And I was like, wow. And so, I first started doing a bunch of tours, my first tour was with Morris. I toured with him for 5 years off and on from 85 to 90. And in between then it was, Shalimar, Pebbles, um, Sheena Easton, a bunch of R&B, funk acts, Go to Japan. That was the hit back in the day, right? Remember in the 80s, Go to Japan. We got a 3-week hit in Japan, because funk and R&B was like just huge over there then. Anyway, so during that time, I was doing touring, but all the while Jeff was, starting to really start shifting from Toto and sessions and start getting into producing. And one day I was home. This was in late 91, early 92, right before Jeff passed. I get this phone call and it's Jeff Porcaro. And he said, "Yo, is this Kirky B?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, man, this is Jeff Porcaro." And I'm like, "No, it's not." Anyway, finally he convinced me it was really him. He said, "Yo, man, I'm starting producing now, and I want you to play on the new Boz Scaggs record that I'm producing. I want you to be the drummer." Yo, what would that be like, right? Who's your hero? It would be like your hero calling you, you know, Jerome Braley or Dennis Chambers, or any of the cats that we know and love, calling you and say, "Yo, Sharon, I need you to get down to the studio right now. I'm producing a record. You're the cat. You're the drummer." Right? That's like a dream come true. That's the Hollywood story right there. So anyway, man, long story short, we got into the record, we recorded it, and shortly thereafter, man, he passed away, and that record never saw the light of day, unfortunately. But yeah, man, he uh, he was the one that got me in the studios. And as when he started recommending me, man, my phone literally started ringing off the hook the next day. He's like, "Man, I got a couple calls I'm gonna make for you, man, and get you out there." And my phone just would not stop ringing, and that was all through from 1990. I mean, till now. But I mean, the decade of 1990 to 2000, 2002, man, it was like I worked every day in the studio, and it was around 2000, 2001 when, record labels started diminishing and going away. And that's a whole other interview,
And, and I and
fortunately.
I and I hope to do that interview with you. That's going to be a good one. Kirky, let me ask you this. Let's get on the other side and talk drum gear.
All right.
What in what endorsements you doing these days, and what kind of gear you playing? Cymbals, drums, sticks, so forth.
DW drums, Peisty cymbals, Vader drumsticks, Remo heads. Chris Hart, what's up? You know Chris, right? Do you know
Oh yeah,
Chris?
oh yeah. Ambassador.
Ambassador Chris Hart. Yeah. Remo, Peisty, DW, Vader drumsticks, Slug percussion, their beaters, CRS cymbal resonance system, which is a suspended cymbal holder, um, big fat snare drum muffles, um, tuner fish lug locks, uh, May microphones, God, Audio Technica microphones, Audix, um, uh, 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 Studio One software. I use that as my DAW. Um, Tune Track, uh, drum plugin, um, XL Audio. I mean, I'm all over the place because I produce, I write, and so now, as drummers back in the day, all we needed was, a good kit, some good cases and stuff. Oh, SKB cases. Um, and now it's like we need everything. We need a computer, we need hard drives, we need software. So, but yeah, those are mainly all of my things that I use in my arsenal.
Kurt, we do a thing on the show we call Word of Advice, where I ask the drummers if they'll leave a parting word of advice for the upcoming drummers, even the guys at the next level, but that are trying to get traction in this game. Would you leave them a word of advice?
Yeah, um, I know the game out there is way different from how when we were coming up, Sharon, and that's good because change is always welcome. Change is inevitable. Change will always happen, especially in the music business, man. You could go back every 10 years, every decade from popular music, and every decade it changes, man. You know, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, the 10s, and now we're in the 20s. And, drummers coming up now, I think it's important that you guys are doing what you're doing, guys and gals doing what you're doing, chops, all the gospel chops, all those licks, shedding, all of that is so important. But the number one, I think, the number one word of advice I could give is as much energy as you give to soloing, as much energy as you give to getting endorsements, as much energy as you give to that side of things, give that kind of energy to the craft of songwriting and song production and the way a song is crafted. And that's where I think as a drummer you'll shine, because let's face it, the drums are what drives the song, the music. And as a drummer, if you could be a part of that and make it special, and it doesn't have to be with chops, if it's done in a musical way, that will forever be the signature of that song. That's my advice. Put your signature on it. Put your sauce on it. Rub it on there. Let it marinate, and you know, be a team player. That's it.
That's good stuff. Kurt, what are you working on these days?
Right now, I'm working with an artist by the name of Will Loomis, and he's doing a rock opera, and that's been in the making for the past year and a half. And he's got a ton of tracks. So this past year and a half, I've been playing on a lot of that stuff for him, and that's been great. I'm doing a lot of writing for TV and film. So I've just been building up my library for that and getting stuff placed, on little commercials, here and there. Hopefully I could land a national, a big McDonald's or Taco Bell or something. Um, uh, every now and then, some production for some upcoming artists. But primarily, I'm still work for hire. So a lot of people from around the world send me their tracks, and I play drums to them. And so, because of the pandemic, and even prior to that, as studios were closing down, I would say the past 12 to 15 years, I've been at home knocking out tracks for people. And primarily, they're all what I call vanity projects, because none of them are on major labels. And because that's kind of where it's at now, with the whole label thing and streaming and stuff. It's like more people are taking it upon themselves to just put out their own music. So I've been playing on a lot of independent artist stuff.
Kurt, let me ask you this one in closing.
Talk to me.
You embrace. You said, "What do you want your Kurt? What would you want your legacy to be? To be said, to be told?"
Man, my legacy, I would want it to be that groove is king, that dancing is my job. It's I think our job as drummers to keep people dancing, because there's nothing worse than a drummer that can't groove, can't keep a beat, who rushes, who slows down, and you're out there, trying to get your sexy on, and you can't get sexy because the groove ain't sexy. And that's all I've ever wanted to do, is make sure I play sexy grooves to keep it sexy on the dance floor. For real. That's been since playing with my mom in the clubs, because those people that would come hear my mom play, is predominantly jazz and some popular music of the day on her B3, but people would dance, and she would always look back at me while she's playing and say, just keep the time, and bro, if my mom was still alive and you heard her play, you would say she's funky. My mom had insane time. She truly did. But I mean, I think that would be the thing I'd want, is to know that the dance of music is priority, for sure.
Yeah, man. That's where it's at, man. If it ain't on that one.
If it ain't on that one. There's that Bootsy YouTube where he talks about the one. And
you're right.
That's it.
So let me ask you this one in closing. Think you ever go back and pick up that saxophone or what?
And look, probably not. Probably not, but never say never. I mean, I love music and I love all instruments. And I mean, who knows, man? I might walk by a pawn shop and see one in the window and grab one. But I just, I leave that up to the professionals. I leave that up
Wow.
to, the cats.
We spoke about a book earlier. You think you let them to do a book on you, do a movie on you? You have quite a journey you're on there, man.
Wow, man! If the opportunity presented itself, I would definitely not turn it away. I would definitely want to see what it would be about. I think it would be. I don't know if it'd be interesting enough, and I think a lot of people say that their lives aren't as interesting, but I think the one story I could tell that would really kind of hit home, for all my Asian brothers and sisters out there, coming up in this business and being Filipino, man, I'm one of the very few. And A, I'm proud of that, but B, now, there's Bruno Mars, he's half Filipino. And his drummer, his brother, Peter, or not Peter, uh Panda, he's a dear friend of mine and we talk a lot and I'm just so proud to see him back there tapping behind his brother Bruno and we could share these Filipinoisms, if you will, and I, I think if there was a story to tell, I would definitely want to tap into that part of it, and I think, most are all Filipinos. We love to dance and groove and I'll never forget in the 80s, man, it was Sonny Emery or someone came up to me and said, yo, man, we were in Manila and we heard this band sound like Tower of Power. I was like, really? Were they there? And they're like, no, man, we went into the club and it was all these little short Filipino dudes playing Tower of Power. And I'm like, what? And, I hear that story all the time with cats that go to the Philippines, which I've never been to, but I just hear that they're the funkiest bands in the Philippines. So I have yet to check that out, man, for sure. So Filipino funk.
That's where it's at. Let
Right?
me say thank you so very much for being on the Extraordinary
Man,
Drum
Sharon,
Show.
thank you, man. It's been too long, bro. And sorry for the phone thing. My wife's still trying to get that together, and I know we were going back and forth and trying to get our schedule, but here we are, man. We did it.
I really appreciate you being on. Will you help me wave goodbye to all the fans?
Yes, goodbye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I hope I didn't bore you. I hope it was exciting. And tune into Extraordinary Drummers with my man right here, Sharon, because he's got some great cats on there. Yeah, I've been watching your stuff, man. Really incredible. Love it.
I really, I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I'm going to stay in touch with you, man.
Please do, man. I'm going to hit you once I get my phone.
Yeah, give
That
me
should
your.
be it should be this week, man. My wife's trying to get it. We left T-Mobile, then went to Spectrum. Now we're going back to T-Mobile. So, long story short, I'll have a phone
I'd
number soon.
love to get together with you and go out and grab a bite too. It's been a long time.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
man. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for
All
having
righty.
me, bro. All right, much love.